It's time for your Heli Life giveaway secret word. Listen up and remember this word because you'll need it to enter for a chance to win exclusive Heli Life gear. Ready? This episode's secret word is yaw. Visit contest.verticalhelicast.com to enter the secret word.
What's up, guys? It's Halsey Schider with the Helicopter Podcast, and we have a wonderful episode planned for today. It's part of our Blades of Valor award ceremony show. I just made that up, actually, but truly it is because today's guest, Mr. Lee Benson, is a recipient of the Blades of Valor award for exceptional awesomeness within the helicopter industry. In fact, I've had wonderful conversations with some of the other recipients, Jack Shanley, who's also the co-host of the Hangar Z podcast, and most recently sat down and talked with Eric Robinson from Operation Helo. So I got to say, I am lucky to be talking to these awesome guys that have done amazing, incredible things within the industry. And Lee, I got to say, I'm looking at your resume here, and it's extensive, and I really can't wait to dive into it. But before we do that, thank you to MHM Publishing for making the podcast possible. We love being on the HeliCASTS platform, along with some incredible podcasts like the Hangar Z, the Real Rescue, the Vertical MRO, and of course, the Valor Flight Crew. Just an incredible lineup, and it's so fun to be able to do co-collaboration. In fact, if you're listening to this podcast, it's likely because you also are reading the article all about Lee and why he's a recipient of the Blades of Valor in the mega issue of Valor. So it's super cool to be able to collaborate with MHM Publishing. And of course, to our sponsors, we appreciate your support. And the best of all, the listeners, thank you for tuning in, week out. Every Tuesday, I've been doing this. I don't know how long it's been, Lee. I think I've been putting out a new episode every week, every Tuesday, for over 2 years, and I haven't taken a break.
Wow.
And I've done it because people tune in and listen to my weird voice. Made even more weird recently. I have a Invisalign in, and it makes it's very hard to talk. I'm fighting like a lisp the entire time with these retainers in. So I'm trying my best. Lee, welcome to the Helicopter Podcast. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Well, man, it looks like a beautiful view from behind there. You're a true California boy, huh? Through
and through, man. Raised in Santa Cruz, and now I live down in Ventura County. Beautiful state.
Man, Santa Cruz, there's certainly worse places to grow up. I'm imagining you had a pretty good time growing up in Santa Cruz, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah, Santa Cruz is beautiful.
What did your
particularly
parents
back
do?
then?
What kind of industry was around back then in Santa Cruz? What were your parents doing?
It was all resort stuff, man. It was his bars and restaurants and hotels because it was just a resort town, and it shut down during the winter, except for Easter break. Parents owned a pizza parlor, so I had gainful employment, and, down the road we went.
Oh, that's excellent. So your parents were in the pizza business, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I've been only in two industries in my life, pizza and aviation.
The pizza will make you more money.
I probably will, actually.
Yeah.
It probably will. I worked at a couple local pizza shops up in Oregon in high school. And to this day, I got to be honest, I make a pretty mean pizza. Still pretty skilled at throwing dough. Was kind of one of my date tricks back in the day. After a few dates, I would invite the gal over for like dinner at the house, and I would make homemade pizza, and I would throw the dough and think I was pretty cool at least. And
yeah.
Now I'm happily married. I'm sure I played that trick on my wife. So, maybe it works here and there. So you go from Southern California, Santa Cruz. I guess is that really Southern California?
No, it's Central California.
It's Central California. Excuse me. And you end up going into the Army.
Yep.
and ultimately into Vietnam. How did that all happen? Was it a draft situation? Did you enlist? How'd that all work out?
No, I enlisted out of high school to go to flight school. I knew that I wanted to be a pilot, pretty much all my life from a very young age. And the opportunity came up to go to Army flight school without a college degree. So I jumped on it, and good decision.
Yeah, incredible decision, really. One of the things, you go to Army flight school, you go off to Vietnam, and you say one of the most interesting events there was a tail rotor failure in hover. Tell me about that experience.
I had a team on board, and I was picking up a Connex, an aluminum 8 by 8 by 8 foot box. Fortunately, it was empty. We were taking it somewhere. Got the aircraft about 15 feet off the ground, and the tail rotor came off on a Huey. And, I was 19 at the time and pretty quick back in the days. So I'll tell you a couple of interesting things. Number one, when it happens, there's no doubt in your mind it's a tail rotor failure.
Yeah.
It's not that you've run out of pedal. It's not that maybe a little gust got you. It's like, this is it.
Yeah, I'm spinning.
Second thing that happened, it's interesting. I never pushed the tail rotor, the pedal, all the way in. I right off the get-go, I realized that ain't going to work.
Yeah, of course.
So I punched the load off, and the aircraft did a 360 and put the pitch down and got to about 4 or 5 feet, pulled everything I had, said a very quick prayer, and got the aircraft back on the ground in one piece.
Wow.
And then the really interesting thing is that I look out the window, and the guys who were sitting in the back seat when this all started are about 50 feet out in front of the helicopter, pointing at me going, oh my God, and I'm looking at them going, looking over my shoulder, how the hell did they get out there? But they left the aircraft at some point on purpose.
Really?
Then the door goes flying open, right? The blades are still coming to a halt. And the door flies open, and I look to the right, and there's a star about that big. Well, it was a one-star general, Carl McNair. And General McNair, who I had the pleasure of knowing later in life, he was the 1st Aviation Brigade commander. He happened to be standing about 100 feet away when it happened. And the next thing you know, he's patting me on the back going, great job, son, great job. And I'm still in shock. I don't know what I've done wrong.
Yeah.
And
you think you're about to get court-martialed?
Yeah, I thought I was going to get court-martialed for sure. So that was the tail rotor failure. And if there was a lesson to learn there, it's that if it ever happens to you, don't worry about it. You'll know what happened. The minute it occurs, you'll know.
It's interesting to me to think, I've had the pleasure of getting to know some Vietnam guys. In fact, the guy that gave me all of my certificates and ratings, other than my instrument, is a guy named Mark Holstat. And he was up in Oregon, and he was a Vietnam veteran. Unlike you, he got drafted. And then he was like, well, I guess if I'm going, I'll sure, helicopters sound fun.
Sure.
So It wasn't like he always wanted to be a pilot situation, and then he went to Vietnam, and he had some harrowing experiences, just like you're talking about here. And, I always found it surprising, like being a young person like that, 18, 19, 20 years old. Obviously youth is a superpower in some cases. You're really resilient at that age. Maybe you're able to kind of deal with things better. But, one thing that always struck me with him is, he would tell these stories, and then I would say, well, what'd you do the next day? Got back in the helicopter and, went flying again, and so, I guess take me back to that time, being that age, being in a foreign country, in a very extreme conflict, flying helicopters and being, it's a very dangerous environment. Do you still think about that time? Is it still very present, top of mind?
No, not really. I mean, I've kind of put it behind me. It was, I wouldn't do it again for $1 million, and I wouldn't give away the experience for $1 million.
Interesting. I like that.
I went in, I think maybe a little immature. I mean, I was only 19. And, I had to grow up pretty quick when I got over there. There was some lessons that I learned about standing up and being, I won't say being a man, but being responsible.
Sure.
For what you're doing. But it was an experience.
Yeah, well, 100%. And, grateful for people like you that, sign up to do these things, are still around and talking about it. And I love that actually so many of the Vietnam vets have given so much back to this industry. I feel like the modern helicopter industry up to this point has actually really been built, on the back of a lot of the Vietnam veterans that have come out. And I'm fortunate. I was born in the late '80s. So I missed the Vietnam conflict completely due to birth. But it was neat for me, even being a little bit of a late arrival into helicopters, starting in 2008 for me personally. I still got to fly with these guys, not just Mark, but other guys that had served during Vietnam. And, you run into the guys in the career and or throughout the industry. And so it's really neat to see that a lot of the Vietnam guys came out and then they entered the civilian sector like you. And then, it was a wonderful contribution to the industry. So pretty neat. Do you stay in touch with any of your Vietnam buddies?
This is for those that are ready to launch their helicopter career training. Hillsboro Heli Academy, the place where pilots from around the world begin their journey. With a real-world experience and a reputation that speaks for itself, visit flyhaa.com because it's different here.
Yeah, a couple of them. And I will say, the thing that a lot of pilots listening to this will miss or have missed, and the guys that were there will understand it. I flew commercially from 73 to 81 before I went to work for LA County Fire Department. And at that time, it was the Wild West. It was ollie auction free. You didn't have near the oversight you've got today.
Of course.
And you didn't have the FAA looking at you real close. So, basically, it was just a whole bunch of guys who were just these can-do, we're going to get it done job kind of thing. And the company would give you a logbook and a contract and say, go. And they didn't want to hear from you. All they wanted to see was, the invoices every 2 weeks. Of course. And whatever went on there, you just took care of it, right? You were just out there on your own, maybe with a mechanic, maybe not, and just working for the customer. And it was great fun. It was, just a really interesting way to make a living at that time. And unfortunately, the industry's matured beyond that, and I don't think those kind of contracts and freedoms are really available today like they were.
No. Yeah, I think those are certainly kind of what you hear in the good old days. And I think that there's probably a lot of fun to that, but there's probably also a lot of niceties where, a little bit of better oversight now and, safety being more important than necessarily the bottom line. And, I'm sure with you at LA County, we can talk extensively about that. I'm guessing that was, lots of oversight there. But before we talk about that, just want to get through some of these other fun stories. The one I don't fully understand, so forgive me, so I'm excited for you to tell me about it, is a rotor brake failure in flight. What happens when that happens?
Well, I was about 1,000 miles down the Aleutian chain, down on a place called Unga Island. And I'd flown from Unga Island over to the mainland of Alaska. And Frank Howell was with me. I knew this guy about 3 days of my whole life, and I've never forgot his name. So we're flying along on a ridgeline at about 50 feet and about 50 miles an hour, just trying to find somewhere. He's a geologist. We're trying to find somewhere to park the helicopter and do whatever he's got to do. And at that time, the Jet Ranger, when you pull the rotor brake, it wasn't the lever and master cylinder you've got today. It was a T-handle that ran a cable up into the roof and then went back to a one-way valve in the main hydraulic system. So when you let the RPM come down to 33% or whatever it is, then you could pull a rotor brake and the hydraulic pressure had reduced enough that it was okay. It all worked out, right? Well, what happened was at 50 knots and 50 feet is that one-way valve failed. And the main hydraulic pressure jumped on the rotor brake and grabbed the rotor, and the rotor went into four pieces. And it ripped. It took the front stages of compression off the motor. With part of the deal, it took the engine cowling door off the left-hand side of the aircraft, part of the rotor brake went through the floor, through the baggage compartment, through the floor of the baggage compartment, out the bottom of the ship, through my bag in the process, which is another story. So that it felt like a tail rotor failure, because the aircraft just, you can imagine when that caliper jumped on that rotor, all kinds of hell broke loose.
Of course.
So I originally rolled throttle back thinking it was an engine failure, and there was nowhere to go. Well, horrible place to have an engine failure. There's nothing but big ass rocks underneath me. So I rolled off this peak, and I looked down and I noticed that the motor was still kind of running. So I thought, well, I rolled throttle back up. Well, that didn't work. I rolled the throttle, but started to roll it in compressor stall and banging all over the place. So I made this auto rotation across the next ridge line by getting really low on the NR. And Bell to this day says it's impossible. Well, I'm here. What can I tell you? We cleared the second ridge line, and there's just the two of us in the aircraft. So we're forward CG, fairly forward CG. The RPM's way down, but the nose falls, and we got about 3,000 vertical feet before we're going to get down to where we're going to land. And the RPM came back. And I guess that was just God's way of telling me that today's not your day. I did the rest of the auto rotation fine, got it on the ground, no big deal. If you screw up an auto rotation in a Jet Ranger, you deserve what you get. So
they do auto nicely.
Yeah, we land on the ground, and Frank and I get out. Well, the blades are coming to a halt, and I open the door and look back there, and I expect to see the tail rotor gone, because I'm still thinking I've had a tail rotor failure. I can't figure out what the hell happened to this thing.
Yeah, interesting.
And I look back, and the tail rotor spin into a normal stop, and I'm thinking, now what I do? So I get out of the helicopter, I start walking around the nose, and I look, and I see the engine cowling doors ripped off the airframe, and I'm thinking, you dumb, you forgot to latch that cowling, and it came off, and that's, now I'm blaming myself. So I get up on the baggage compartment, and the step there, right? And I look inside the engine compartment, and here's a cord of the rotor brake still in the shaft. The aircraft is doing this all the way down. It's like in a Dutch roll, which I couldn't figure out either. You can imagine how confused I was during this whole thing.
Yeah, totally.
Well, that was the aircraft trying to get around that piece. And I see the engine, part of the engine's gone. There's a hole through the floor, and I'm thinking, I didn't do this. This isn't me, right?
Yeah, this was not my fault.
Not my fault. So Frank and I spent 3 days on the ground. We were a long ways from nowhere. There was no getting out of where we're at. We were either going to get rescued or we're going to die where we're at. That's it in a nutshell. So Frank, he says, what do we do now? And I said, well, there's a mountain. We need to put the ELT as high as we can get it. And I'm thinking up on the rotor brake, right? And he goes, well, how about that mountain? And I said, well, Frank, that mountain's like 3 miles and 4,000 feet from where we're standing. He goes, Lee, I'm the vice president of the British Columbia Mountaineering Club. That's a walk in the park. You want the ELT up there? I'll put it up there. I said, okay. So I turned the ELT on and gave it to him. And I went to give him I had a 44 Magnum on me. And I went to give him the pistol because he's going to cross all this ground. He goes, oh, no, I don't need that. So he takes off, and he's gone for a while. And I'm sitting in the helicopter, and all of a sudden I hear this growling. I'm thinking, what now? So I look out the door, and here's this fox trying to get in the aircraft, and he's got saliva running down his face. He's rabid. And I'm thinking, what the hell? So I jump out of the other side of the helicopter, and I get up on the top of the helicopter. I am not an outdoorsman. Never have been, never will be. Camping to me is Motel 6.
Sure.
So I get up on top of the helicopter, and I'm holding on the mast with one hand, and the fox is trying to come up the side of the helicopter. So I pull out the 44 and cock it. Now I'm going to fire one-handed because I got to hold on to the helicopter. So I fire the pistol. Hand goes up, hits the blade. I drop the weapon, but I hit the fox. So kill the fox. So I buried the fox. Pretty soon, Frank shows. I hear him, hey, Lee. I get out of the helicopter, and I'm like, and I'm looking, and here comes Frank, and he's had a pretty good jog, right? So I start walking out towards him, and all of a sudden he says, there's a bear. And here's this grizzly bear that's walking along behind him, right?
My God.
And the grizzly, there's this whole blueberry patch where we landed. So the bear stops about 150 yards from where we're at, sits down and starts eating blueberries. So we sat there for 2 days with this bear there the whole time. So when the Coast Guard shows up, right, with a C-130, and they're like, I hear him coming. I'm Mayday, Mayday. Calm down. We're here. We're going to take care of it. We've got your ELT. No. We're way over here. We're not at the ELT. Mm-hmm. ELT's probably still up on the mountain going off.
That's funny.
He goes, do you need anything? I said, no, we're good. He says, but there is this bear, right? So he says, you want me to scare it off? And I said, that would be wonderful. So he goes, we're right on the edge of the ocean there. So he goes out over the ocean and comes across. He's probably 150 feet off the ground, goes over the top of this bear. The bear jumps up in the air, defuels on the way up in the air and takes off running towards the helicopter. It goes about 30 or 40 feet behind the tail rotor and continues the march. So that's the bear story.
My God.
So
everything wrong that could happen, I think happened. Except dying.
Yeah, except diving. So, that an AD came out over that, right? And you know what AD stands for?
Oh, yeah.
After death.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, yeah, good. Yeah.
So that's when all the Jet Rangers got changed to a lever, with the master cylinder.
Yeah, what a just a fluke event, and honestly, so lucky that
oh yeah.
I think about it and it's like, man, how did the rotor not decay enough, So just incredible that you were able to maintain the rotor enough. And then I guess when you got over that ridge, was the caliper so worn down that you were just able to, the rotor?
No, it let go at that time.
Okay.
The whole thing had come untogether. I mean,
yeah, so it was just in pieces.
The caliper, if you're familiar with a rotor brake caliper setup, the caliper came clean off its mount. It busted the caliper clean off the mount.
Jeez.
You can imagine there's, 2,000 pounds PSI.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, the force would be crazy.
Yeah.
So is that, what was the guy's name? Frank
Hollister, yeah.
And did you ever stay in touch with Frank or?
No, I haven't seen him since that day, but I never forgot his name.
I feel like you guys should connect. Talk about that's like a trauma bond right there. I mean, that I can't imagine, a much more worse of a scenario, but I'm glad it worked out. It makes for a terrific story on the podcast. I really appreciate you sharing. I'm just going to go right into the next one here, which I'm also a little confused about, that you got thrown off the deck of a destroyer.
Yeah.
Literally?
When I was flying for Condor, which is now Aspen in Oxnard, owned by friends of mine to this day, we had a contract with Pacific Missile Test Center here out of Magoo, and we supported their different activities all, out to about 100 miles offshore. And they had the CWIS system. Are you familiar with that? That's the 20 millimeter Vulcan cannon. That's the close-in weapon system for the Navy.
Yeah, I think I've seen a video of it where it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm going out 75 miles offshore in a Jet Ranger, landing on the back of a destroyer escort, and they've got the thing on a 2-point moor. Well, the problem with a 2-point moor is instead of weather vaning into the waves, right, and then the boat riding it smoothly on a 2-point moor, you can have a really calm day. If the swells are coming in at a 45-degree angle, the ship is just going crazy. I mean, the back end is just going all over the place. So we learned really quickly when we landed on the deck, number one, we never went below 100%, period. The aircraft was already 100%. It didn't matter how calm it was. And the guys knew that I was taken out there and stuff. They were either on the aircraft or on the ship. There was no in between.
Mm-hmm.
They were committed. Once you went to get off, you got off. So I worked for them for a couple of years in with those programs. And two of the interesting things that happened was this was all the sea trials for the CWIS. So as General Dynamics was the OEM of the weapon system, PMTC was the test conductor. I was working for PMTC. we got a green light we're sitting on San Nicolas Island. The boat's about 7 miles off of San Nicolas Island. We get a call one day. We got to go out to the ship, and very unusual, but Jim Redden, who was the head of PMTC, happened to be out there, and Bob Cloward, who is the program manager for General Dynamics, was there. So the two main honchos for the program, and they come out, they go, hey, come on, let's go out to the ship. And, sure, okay, as we jump in this Jet Ranger, and out we go, and when they fire a missile at the system, the warhead's got 3 pieces. It's got a trigger, a booster, and the warhead. That's important because when they do testing, they pull a trigger because they want to hit the missile several times before it blows up to get more data. Well, somebody at China Lake had pulled the trigger and the booster. So now the warhead's damn near inert. So this F4 comes in and fires this walleye. It's a first generation smart bomb, wire guided. And the first round out of the Sea Whiz takes out the camera on the missile. So now it's blind. So the F4 just pulls off and goes away. Well, the missile comes in towards the boat, and it gets about 5 feet out from the edge of the boat and starts to blow up. And then it goes into the front of the ship. It's a ship. It's not a boat. It goes into the ship, and it blows up. Well, we don't know that. We get a green light from the house that, everything's hunky-dory going, and we're going to go out and get the film and do this, that, and the other thing. So we go out and we fly up the port side of the ship, and we get along to the nose, and there's all this smoke there, which is not unusual. A missile just blew up, so okay, fine, The rotor wash clears the smoke away, and we look over, and the ship's gone. From the bow to the main first superstructure, from the main deck down to the bottom deck, gone. It's just a big old hole. And Cloward, who was a Reverend Mormon, said a few things I won't repeat. So then we go around the nose, and we start coming back up the other side. We're going to land back on the tail of the ship. And the gun is pointed down at the water, because that was the last shot it took, was down at the water. And it's, we've got a green light. Everything's hunky-dory. We come up the other side of the ship, and the Sea Whiz system goes whop up onto the Jet Ranger, and it was out of ammo. They had projected how many rounds this thing would fire if it did exactly what it did, and it'd run it out of ammo. The only reason I'm sitting here was that weapon was out of ammo.
My goodness.
So we go out, we're flying around for a couple of minutes, and Cloward or Redden finally says, we can land on the ship. And I said, when I quit shaking, we'll land on the ship. Yeah. So we landed on the ship, and they cleaned all that mess up.
My gosh. Let's see here. How many lives have you used up, you think?
More than a cat, I guarantee you.
More than a cat. Yeah. My gosh, what a story. I feel like someone probably lost their job after that incident, huh?
No, I just think somebody made a mistake and pulled the booster. I mean, it happened. So the other one, still working for PMTC, I get a call one day, and they said, hey, we're going to do a ICBM launch off a submarine tomorrow. We want to film it. Okay. So we're going to go out, kind of out there between Santa Barbara Island, San Nicolas, and Anacapa, if the guys know where that's at. It's the middle of nowhere, but 6,000 feet of water. And they're going to put me on a heading of 210, which is where the wind normally comes from. I mean, these guys are pros. They know what they're doing. So I'm right into the wind. We got the doors off the back of the aircraft. They've got a camera mounted in it. They've got a buoy they want me to hover, right? This buoy's attached to the sub. So it's a British submarine that's fired. It's the first time a Brit's ever fired this particular class missile. So we're listening to the headset, 3, 2, 1. Missiles from underwater are fired with air. Air blows them up to the surface, and they light and go.
Oh, interesting. So
we're sitting there looking out where we think the submarine's at, waiting for this thing to come out of the water. This could be pretty cool, right?
Yeah, of course.
All the water underneath us turns light blue.
Oh, no.
And the missile comes out of the water about 75 yards away. and me and the operator are like, oh. So all I could do was turn the nose towards where the missile was at, and then it fired the motor. We couldn't hear anything. I mean, this thing, and off it goes, right? Well, what happened was, after we all settled down a little bit, they were pulling this buoy, and that's where they wanted me to be, because the buoy was supposed to be like 1,000 yards behind the ship, right? Well, what they didn't take into account was that British submarines hover when they fire missiles. American subs keep moving forward, evidently. I don't know. And the buoy got caught by the current and
just
came
went
up
right
over
over
the
it.
sub. Yeah, so we were.
I don't know if you're the most unlucky guy or the most lucky guy. I think
No,
it's
most lucky. No doubt about it.
kind of somewhere in between there. Man, yeah, fascinating. Yeah, you should write a book. I don't know if you've written a book, but you should
No, I haven't
consider
read them.
writing a book. It's very entertaining. It's truly amazing stories, honestly, and they're fun. I'm sure at the time they're not always as fun. It sounds like maybe you had to check your pants a couple of times. I think I would have
Yeah.
maybe left a
Yeah.
skid mark or two. But it's crazy. It's neat to hear these stories, and I'm guessing it's just really shaped so much of your experience. I mean, I think you said here 15,000 plus hours as a pilot. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I haven't met too many helicopter pilots, honestly, that are more than 10,000 hours, really. So, incredible amount of experience and time. And then, of course, getting into LA County, that was in what, 1981 is when you started?
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
81. Yeah, I went to work for him at 81. I'll tell you a real quick story about the 15,000 hours, right? I'm over in England giving a speech.
Please.
And everybody in the room is like the chief of naval operation for Britain and the Swedish Coast Guard. What I'm doing in the room, nobody knows. So I get done making this presentation about how LA County does swiftwater rescues, which was not just LA County. When that program was set up, it was all the agencies around, and we can't take credit by ourselves. LA City, Glendale, we all got involved with it. So I'm getting this presentation about how we do that, and I get done, and I had talked about the pilots at LA County. At that time, every pilot on the staff had more than 10,000 hours. Every single pilot. 12 pilots, they all had more than 10,000. The CNO of the British Navy stands up and he goes, I say, Mr. Benson, I've never shaken the hand of whatever I had at that time, 1,000-hour pilot. Can I shake your hand? And I said, certainly, sir. And I shook his hand. He goes, how does one go about managing pilots with that kind of flight time? And I said, you don't manage them. You put a limit over here and a limit over there. And as long as they stay somewhere in the middle, leave them alone. Just let them do what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, though, really. I mean, I get what he's talking about, because it's almost like how do you coach Tom Brady, right? But I guess you still need Belichick, right? So it's like,
yeah.
Even with super high time and experienced pilots, I'm guessing as a manager of those types of pilots, there's different things that you have to look out for.
All the pilots on the staff. I mean, because I had the title of chief pilot doesn't mean I was the best pilot by any stretch. It had nothing to do with that. These guys were very competent pilots. We had one pilot on staff, Guy Martin, who had 24,000 hours in helicopters.
That's insane.
I hired him. I saw his logbook. This guy was technically probably one of the most sophisticated pilots I ever worked with. So to say that I managed him, no. I just provided him an environment in which he could work. That's it. Just try to keep the chiefs from causing problems. Keep the outside influences away. Don't get them all excited about what the maintenance budget is or anything else. Just let them go out and do their job.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, and I've managed some pilots in the past, but I always managed baby pilots. I was part of a flight school management team, so here I am. I'm watching the guys with between 200 and 1,000 hours, and
sure,
there's certain things you look out for with those types of pilots. How do you manage for yourself complacency? Because I do think that one thing that experience can bring a lapse in complacency. I've seen it with myself, and I don't nearly have 15,000 hours, maybe 3,000 hours for me. And I've gone down some paths before where I had to check myself.
Absolutely.
What are ways that you've mitigated being complacent with that type of experience?
Well, one of the notes I sent you, which is one of my lessons learned in life, is you're as good a hand pilot as you're ever going to be at 5,000 to 6,000 hours.
Yeah, I see that
By
here.
the time, and probably before that, your hand skills, your ability to actually physically fly the aircraft, you either got it or you don't. You're not going to get better beyond that. So the thing that comes after that is professionalism, attitude. You got to stay on it. And to me, a lot of people ask me, did you continue to fly after you left LA County? And I said, no. And they were going, well, don't you miss it? And I go, yeah. But I said, here's the deal. When you do that kind of flying, I mean, they're doing hoists at 7,000 feet in the dark on goggles and fighting fires and all this other stuff. When you've done that kind of flying for 27 years, what are you gonna do next? Work for the news or something? And the other thing is, if you're going to do that kind of flying, in my mind, you need to be surrounded by other pilots that do the same thing, because you become a check onto yourself. The pilots talk, we converse with each other. I had my guys that I went to when I saw something or thought something or something happened that I didn't quite understand. There were guys I'd sit down and go, what do you think? And, that you respect that guy's opinion. That's why you're asking it. So it's a difficult thing to do. It really is.
Will you elaborate a little bit? I've talked about this before, and so I love that you brought it up, especially with your experience, because it really just marks that you truly have that experience. You use the word professionalism, and I've harped on that before on this podcast, because we have a lot of our listener base is learning how to fly helicopters, or not even yet. Yeah. They're getting into it. And I've always tried to talk about what it means for me to be a professional aviator, but I'm curious to hear someone like you with your immense experience, what that professionalism means.
Well, first of all, when we came out of Vietnam, we all thought we were pretty good pilots. We'd survived Vietnam and therefore we were one. Little did we know that until you got into the commercial world, especially then, because most of the aircraft at that time were underpowered and under tail rotored. I mean, the Black Hawk, oh my God, the thing is amazing. So professionalism to me is, and I hope people don't take this wrong, being a good pilot when you're a commercial pilot is just accepted. You're no different than everybody else, right? They're all competent pilots.
Of course.
Everybody I worked around in my commercial career was a very competent pilot. What makes a professional pilot is their ability to understand the customer's needs and perform and do what's necessary to meet those needs. Whether it be fighting fires or hauling a geologist or doing land survey work, which I did a lot of, which is a whole story by itself. You got to understand what your customer needs, why he's paying your company big bucks to have this helicopter, and you need to focus on within the bounds of aviation safety. You don't forget that part, but you have to focus on their needs. The exception to that, to me, is EMS. EMS to me is a problem because, in my mind, many pilots get too involved with what's going on in the back seat.
Sure.
And when I worked for Rotor and Wing, I've written for both Rotor and Wing for a long period of time and Vertical for a long period of time. One of the OEMs wanted to put an ad in the paper, and it showed this, very gallant pilot sitting up in the front seat of this new super duper helicopter, and it says, "Your job is to save lives." That's not his job. His job is to fly the helicopter.
Yeah. His job is to not kill anyone.
Yeah. Yep.
As a pilot.
The guys in the back seat save the people. You're just flying the helicopter.
It's interesting too. And I think, one of my experience, because I flew air medical, was that they were really working hard to disconnect the pilot from at least that experience, because you're exactly right. As pilots, that personality trait is mission driven, right? So you throw me a mission and I'm going to want to try to figure out a way to accomplish it. Mm-hmm. And that was causing a lot of accidents in air medical because you're mission oriented. Maybe the call comes in and it's a kid that's drowned. If he doesn't get in a helicopter and get, level 1 trauma care right away, he's going to die So you hear that as a pilot, as a father, what are you going to do? You're going to get in the helicopter and you're going to go, right? So first and foremost, they stopped talking about what you were doing. So when I flew air medical, I never knew, other than like the very basic, hey, we're going to a car accident.
Yeah.
Or, hey, we're going to a hospital. Or, hey, we're going to a ranch. And like that ranch was like picking up a 3-year-old that was drowned, right?
Yeah.
You didn't know going into it, so it didn't affect your decision. And then the company has this operational control center now, and they won't even let you pull pitch unless, the minimums are met. If there's a cloud between you and there, they don't let you go. They're very conservative now. So it's interesting. It's they've taken a lot of that mission pressure out of it, and I think that's helped make the air medical world a little bit.
Yeah, my only commercial EMS contract was a hospital back in the Midwest, and I was flying for a company out here just before I went to work for LA County in 1981, flying a EMS Bocow back in the Midwest, and we get this. I'm up in the pilot's room one night, and we get the call from the chief surgeon, and he says, "Hey, we got to go to point A, right?" And I'm like, "Okay, well the weather's poor," so I call up the weather. Yeah. And come to find out there's this line of thunderstorms that are going to come across, and it's perfectly lined up. We're going to wind up flying through one thunderstorm right after another to get to point A. So I call him back and I go, "Doc, we can't go right now. We're going to have to wait for this weather to clear." And the doc's on the phone with me and he goes, "Well, I guess she'll just have to die." And I already know it's like a 3-year-old kid. They've told me the whole thing about what's going on. And I guess she'll just have to fly. And I slammed the phone down and went down the hallway, across the sky bridge, down the elevator, into the ER. Remember, I'm 5 years old at the time, right? And I come out of that elevator and I'm ready for bear. I was going to kick this guy's ass. And he literally grabbed 2 nurses and got the nurses between me and him. And I'm over his shoulder going, "Don't you pull a guilt trip like that on me ever."
Yeah, it's true.
The advantage I had was it was a temporary assignment. And the other advantage was I already had the job for LA County. They had called me while I was out there saying, "You're going to go to work for us." Other people at that time, that's how they were making their living. And if you couldn't keep the hospital happy, you didn't have a job.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, look, that's air medical killed a lot of crews for a very long time.
Ooh, yep.
Specifically to that mentality. And I look at it like, man, you guys really had to pave the way for us, right? My generation of pilots, we have things a lot better, right? Our helicopters are more advanced. We have more tools. Even funny, I got to be honestly, like I look at like what you're probably flying in a Bocow in 1981, flying air medical at night. You're not aided. I'm sure you're not aided.
Nope, not aided.
You're all steam gauges. Is GPS even a thing? Like, are you?
Nope.
How do you go from point A to point B? I couldn't do it. Like, how do you?
Mark 8 eyeballs. Mark 8 eyeballs. Yeah, it was. And the other thing was, these hospital administrators at that time thought they were the cat's meow, right? You want to see, ego in my life is, I don't know whether it's surgeons or Navy pilots, but one or the other got the biggest ego in the world, and helicopter pilots come right behind that somewhere.
Yeah, we're not far behind.
So these medical people are writing contracts with these guys that own helicopter companies. Well, that's not even an even fight because they're on the operator's home turf. The guy that I relieved at this hospital, there's a reason I'm not saying which one, had been on that program for 21 days straight, 24-hour shifts, one right after another.
Wow.
Yeah, and I flew out from California back to the Midwest to relieve him.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Yeah, times are changing.
Times have changed, yeah.
Big time. Something that I'm impressed with here is 1981 to 2008 with LA County. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I mean, that's an incredible tenure. I mean, I'm not going to do the math because I can't, but that's a lot of years. You don't really see that often, actually. I feel like specifically in the helicopter world, people are always kind of migrating around. Yeah. What was it about LA County that just it seems like it caught you and it just kept you there?
Number one, if I'd have known how good that job was when I took the flight exam, I'd have probably crashed the helicopter. I had no idea
Yeah.
what the pay was, what the retirement was, what the condition of the equipment was, the professionalism of the other pilots. I didn't know anything about LA County, period. And they didn't know anything about me. And I was there for like 3 months before I ever really figured out what I was making. And, when I finally saw the check at that time, pilots in the industry get paid nothing. I mean, I'd go up to Alaska and the bull cooks were making more money than I was. I was having more fun, but they were making more money. And so it's just a quality operation.
So obviously you ended up as the chief for LA County Air Ops. What is kind of the path? Like, where did you start? And just the progression through that. And then, of course, let's talk about the Firehawk, which is something I know very little about, to be honest. So love to hear about just the tenure there and then getting into the Firehawk.
As always, a special thanks to HeliCASTS for producing this podcast. Specializing in helicopter evaluations, faster sales, and superb service, HeliCASTS is the go-to agency for clients expecting immediate results. HeliCASTS' team of helicopter professionals are the best in the business. Using their aviation expertise, a nationwide network, and a proprietary 76-step listing strategy, HeliCASTS will convert your listing from Mayday to payday. Ready to get started? Text helicopter to 1-855-HeliCASTS. That's helicopter to 1-855-735-5226. And a HeliCASTS pilot agent will reach out. HeliCASTS. List it, sell it, done.
Well, I went in and I became the assistant training officer almost right off the bat because the training guy needed help. And so I learned that part of the business. Then they promoted me to safety officer, which is the worst job in aviation. I'll never do it again because it's a zero-sum game. And then from there...
You're the guy with the safety vest on that everyone hates?
Yeah, forget it. And then in 93, we had these huge fires, the Topanga fire, and it became very apparent to me that we needed a bigger helicopter. We needed something with more hit. We just lost 20,000 acres and 200 houses, and I was his line pilot at the time, and I flew the Chief P. Michael Freeman, really good chief. And during the flight, I said, Chief, we need a bigger helicopter. We need a bigger tank and more capability. And he goes, well, nobody's brought that up before. And I said, well, I'm telling you now. And he goes, all right, go figure it out. So the original Firehawk and I went and looked and, tried to figure out what aircraft we should use. Well, if you think about it, at that time, we were a 205-412 operator. The 205, if you think about it, from day one to the day it finally retired from the Army, there were, how many people looking at that airframe? They had people looking every nut, bolt, blade, everything. They knew it inside out and backwards. That kind of oversight doesn't occur on anything but a military aircraft, period. So I thought, well, the Black Hawk, that's the replacement. Obviously, it is what it is. I had no idea how good it was. So I met with Sikorsky at the HAI. The original Firehawk was drawn on a napkin in the bar at the Hilton, and that was 93, and it took until 2000 to the year December 2000 before we finally bought one, and the political games that went on between then and there could go on for a week, and resistance from outside the department, inside the department. The U.S. Army was not happy with us because we were talking about flying at single pilot, and they didn't want that to happen. There were people at Sikorsky that didn't want us to fly the aircraft single pilot, and we looked at it, the staff looked at it, and in the end, I'll tell you that I would rather fly a Black Hawk single pilot than I would a 412 because the Black Hawks have more wayward redundancy and just it's a really easy aircraft to fly. The 412, there's several things in it. Long shaft failure in a 412, you got about a second and a half to get the pitch down or it's over. In Black Hawk, that's not your hurry. So we went back and got a Black Hawk in 95, brought it out to LA County, flew it for 10 days, and did whatever we could do without a tank or anything like that. Then we brought a Black Hawk out in 98 on what we call the 100-day trial, and that had a tank on it, and flew that. And then we got the opportunity to buy. The Sultan of Brunei had bought 2 Blackhawks, and there was some problems with finance over there, not worth getting into. And Sikorsky called us up and said, hey, we've got these 2 Blackhawks on the ramp. The Sultan's backed out of the acquisition. If you want them, this is what we want for them. So we bought those 2 Blackhawks. But then we had to, take the Blackhawk, and because of the way they had built it, it had to be demodded and then modified back to what we built. So if you look at the Firehawk, what I call the Firehawk, different than just the Blackhawk fighting fires, which is doing God's work. But we had to be able to do swift water, hoist, medical evacuations, fire, whatever. You can't justify in a public operation spending that kind of money and not being able to use it year-round and being able to do your full mission set. And so we accomplished that. As an example, when the aircraft stands on standby, it's typically sitting up at a camp with the flight crew that's going to go with it if it goes to a fire. It's in medical configuration, 2 litters, all the medical stuff set up. The requirement from the chief was, until the crew got to fly on the helicopter, they had to be able to pull the medical gear, drop the seats, get on board, and be ready to go by the time I got the aircraft cranked and ready to go. And those crews, they worked like an IndyCar crew. They worked on that for weeks.
Sure.
A 12-man crew, and every step, every move was choreographed to the nth degree to get all that out and all that in the seat and ready to go. But they did it.
Here's a stupid question. And when we're talking about the Firehawk specifically, we're talking about it's a certified aircraft from Sikorsky. This isn't a UH-60 surplus former Army used aircraft that's now in like a restricted category that gets modded out. This is a off the factory floor certified Sikorsky aircraft.
Off the floor aircraft from Sikorsky, but not certified.
Not certified.
And in fact, not even restricted category certified. Remember, you're working public operations. That was an interesting phone call when they called the FAA from Sikorsky and wanted to move our N number onto the Blackhawk, the first one we brought back. And the guys, they quite didn't know what to do. They go, it's a new Blackhawk? And I go, yeah. And he goes, and you're going to fly in public? Yeah. And you're not going to get restricted. No, I don't have to. It's public aircraft. And so obviously it all works.
So because it's public use, what would it operate under then?
You become, as the public operator, the aircraft certification authority for that aircraft. Now, what I did and what we did both is we required United Rotorcraft did all the modifications. Mm-hmm. We went to them, we had a relationship with them, and we said, look, we want you to do all these mods as if you were going to turn them into the FAA for an STC. We want all that documentation. Now, we're not going to turn it into the FAA, but due diligence by management, which is a legal concept, especially in California, that's what I rely on, that if anything ever went wrong, I could pull out all that documentation and say, here, this is what we did. Yeah, those documents sit in my closet in my office. I still got them to this day, just in case.
You always got a CYA.
Yep.
That's incredible. So do you think that you single-handedly were responsible for the Firehawk coming to LA County, and then now the Firehawk also being used in other public use?
It certainly wasn't a single person, but a couple of lessons learned. Here we've got this aircraft. We're going to have to modify it, and you've got multiple groups within Air Ops. You've got the pilots, you've got the mechanics, you've got the paramedics, right? And then you got administration, and I'm the program manager. Well, one of the smarter things I did, which was purely by accident, but it turned out well, was I grabbed the pilots and I said, put together a pilot group to determine what we need in this aircraft and pick a lead person for that group. And it's not me. I'm the program manager. I'll be part of the group, but I'm not the manager. I'm not the lead on that group. Same thing with the mechanics, same thing with the paramedics, same thing with administration. Then the rule was I only talk to one person. I don't want to hear the opinion of 18 different paramedics. I want to hear their lead guy tell me what that group has come up with, what their needs are and what their wants are. And I need them, put that way. Here's what we need. This is what we want. So from that, we put together the requirement. And the other thing was there was only 2 people from LA County that talked to UR, myself and the director of maintenance. Nobody else called them. None of the other people were authorized to call UR and say, hey, we need this, we need that. It came through me, or at that time, it came through Mitch Gay. He was a DOM. So that gave them clarity that they weren't working with multiple people. And some people today miss that aspect. I see it being on the other side now, working for Becker and different companies that I work for. We'll get input from 2 or 3 different pilots that's conflicting. Well, what do we do? Now we got to figure out which one counts.
Yeah, it's very hard. It's it seems like you say it was by accident. It seems like that was a pretty good decision on your behalf, and that's how you can get the clearest data.
Yeah,
kind of by segmenting and just working with one individual from kind of each sector. So very smart. And, very smart way to put together an aircraft, right? I was talking earlier on an earlier podcast, Airbus is coming out with a new aircraft. It's the 140, and it's really specific to air medical.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously can do other missions, but built for air medical. And I was talking on the podcast to a CEO of a large air medical outfit. And, essentially Airbus came out and, they field tested, what was working, say in the 135 or the 145, and what wasn't working. And, they really built the aircraft around the crew.
Yeah.
The paramedic, the nurse, any doctors, the pilot, and then now they've created this aircraft. So it seems very similar to kind of what you were talking about with the Firehawk of,
Well, we considered at that time Sikorsky and UR to be our partners. We didn't look at them as vendors. We looked at them as partners. And, one of the things that I think people, and I see this being on the other side of the coin now, you as a line pilot go to a vendor, and if you're just going to listen, we have this issue, can you help us? That's great. But if you're going to come and start bitching or start, rambling on and start getting in the face, well, this pilot doesn't know it, but we're already working with his director of maintenance on that problem, and we have a correction, and it's coming down the line, and what all he's doing is pissing us off. Right? That's not, you gotta,
yeah.
There's a synergy there. You gotta work it correctly.
What is it? To catch more flies with honey, right?
Yeah.
And it's a delicate dance, right? Especially when you're working with an OEM, I would imagine that you really have to be political at some points of how you approach certain things. Even in my business, I feel like most of my job is just trying to figure out the politics of a situation to navigate different personalities and the complexities of human interaction, right? I very much would think that that's the case when you're working with an OEM.
When you're working in an entity like LA County, this is a big department.
Sure.
The budget for LA County is over $1 billion.
Insane.
For LA County Fire, right? Air Ops is just this little bitty part way down in the corner there, but it's real visible.
Yeah, of course.
And you've got all these fire chiefs, and they're good guys, but they're not aviation people, right? So what you have to do if you're going to do something like a Firehawk program, you have to earn the trust of the people downtown. On other subjects, you've had to build a relationship that shows them that you have the best interests of the department at heart and that you're going to do the right thing for the mission, the constituents, et cetera, et cetera. And once they trust you, then when you come in with something like this and you say, hey, this is something we need to do, you've got some faith going. It's the same thing with procurement people. I've written articles about procurement. I think all the procurement people go to the same church and sing out of the same hymnal, right? And when you go and sit down with that procurement person, they may be a GS whatever, and they're making 30% of the money you're making, and you're getting all the notoriety, and you're a pilot for LA County, and they see you on the news and all, and they're in some corner and people are throwing poop at them, right?
Yeah, of course.
You've got to be able to get those people to see your mission, to see you as something that they want to support. And I've said it many times. When I started working with a procurement person, one of the first things I did was I got a really nice picture of one of our then helicopters doing a drop or something, and gave it to the procurement person and said, here, this is for your office. And if you go back 2 weeks later and that picture's not in the office, that means it went home. And that's even better.
Yeah.
So then you bring another picture, go, here, hang this one in the office.
Give this one to your kid.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you got to play the game sometimes. Well, hey, Lee, we're coming up on our time. What a fun episode. Producer Zach recently was telling me that I need to do a better job at just, trying to get some fun stories out of the guests. And I feel like out of all the podcasts that I've done, the stories that we talked about with you have certainly been the most entertaining.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you coming on and sharing those experiences. Congratulations on being a recipient of the Blades of Valor from Valor magazine. And again, this will be a co-collaboration with them on the podcast. So we're excited for that release, excited for you to be the recipient of that honor. Obviously, you were instrumental with LA County. And nowadays, still to this day, the Firehawk is, bad to the bone, go-to aircraft. And, now more than ever, it seems like wildfires are just getting worse and worse worse.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's, it's great to have these tools, and very lucky that people like you spearheaded it back in the day and collaborated not only with the county and the bean counters of the county and the constituents of the county, but working then with the OEM and then United Rotorcraft to really put together this amazing aircraft. So very cool, wonderful history. To our listeners, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love having these conversations, and because you listen, I get to talk to really cool people like Lee. Lee, thank you so much for joining. This was kind of a last-minute schedule too, so I really appreciate you accommodating us on that so we can get this released in time for the article. To our sponsors, we love you guys. We appreciate you supporting this podcast, and of course to MHM Publishing, where Vertical Magazine, I should say Valor in this case, also calls home. We love the HeliCASTS platform. Lee, thank you so much. Really look forward to staying in touch with you, and just had such a great time chatting with you.
All right, man. Everybody fly safe.
Appreciate it, Lee.
Please stay tuned for a final word from our sponsors.
This is for those that are ready to launch their helicopter career training. Hillsboro Heli Academy, the place where pilots from around the world begin their journey. With a real-world experience and a reputation that speaks for itself, visit flyhaa.com because it's different here.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
As always, a special thanks to Helicopter for producing this podcast. Specializing in helicopter evaluations, faster sales, and superb service, Helicopter is the go-to agency for clients expecting immediate results. Helicopter's team of helicopter professionals are the best in the business. Using their aviation expertise, a nationwide network, and a proprietary 76-step listing strategy, Helicopter will convert your listing from Mayday to payday. Ready to get started? Text Helicopter to 1-855-Helicopter. That's Helicopter to 1-855-735-5226. And a Helicopter pilot agent will reach out. Helicopter. List it, sell it, done.